Have you ever felt that peculiar sensation of being watched when you're completely alone? That subtle awareness that pulls your eyes upward to scan an empty room, only to find nothing there. Now, imagine that feeling, but on a cosmic scale, humanity, collectively sensing a presence in the darkness between stars. What would it mean if, just once in our history, that feeling turned out to be justified? The night of March 12, 2025, began like countless others at the European Space Agency's Deep Space Array in Tenerife. The observatory perched on volcanic slopes above a blanket of clouds, its white domes gleaming under stars that seemed close enough to touch. Inside the main control room, Dr. Alina Reyes suppressed a yawn as she monitored routine data streams. The midnight shift was quiet, just 3 researchers tracking familiar celestial objects against the velvet backdrop of space. Alina had been working here for 7 years, and the rhythm of the observatory had become as familiar as her own heartbeat. The array was pointed toward a seemingly empty region between Neptune and the Kuiper Belt, ordinary space that rarely offered surprises. Perhaps that's why, when the first anomalous pattern appeared on her screen at exactly 3:11 UTC, Alina almost dismissed it as interference. A small fluctuation, a brief disturbance in the expected data, just enough to make her pause, coffee cup halfway to her lips, eyes narrowing at the display. "That's unusual," she murmured, more to herself than to her colleagues. The pattern didn't match any known celestial object in their database. It wasn't a comet, wasn't an asteroid, wasn't the radio signature of a distant pulsar or quasar. It was something else entirely, something that seemed to be approaching our solar system from interstellar space, yet decelerating in a way that defied natural physics, as if it were resisting the gravitational pull that should have been accelerating it. "Carlos," she called, voice soft but urgent, "you need to see this." Dr. Carlos Mendez looked up from his own station, eyes tired from hours of staring at screens. But as he studied the pattern on Elena's monitor, the fatigue vanished from his expression, replaced by the intense focus that had made him one of Europe's leading astronomers. "Run a verification sequence," he instructed, already moving to his own terminal to check the readings independently. "And wake Malik. He'll want to see this." Within minutes, all 3 researchers were hunched over their screens, running calculations, checking and rechecking the data. The pattern remained persistent and undeniable. Something was out there, something that didn't behave like anything they'd documented before. "System is assigning it a designation," Alina noted, watching as the computer cataloged the object. 3IATLAS, the third interstellar object ever documented by our observatory. "The deceleration pattern is impossible," Malik Adenian said, his British accent more pronounced with excitement. "It's as if it's choosing its own path through space rather than being subject to gravitational forces." None of them said what they were thinking, that natural objects don't choose paths, don't resist gravity, don't behave with apparent purpose. To voice such thoughts would be to step beyond the boundaries of established science, to venture into speculation that could damage professional reputations. And yet, the thought hung in the air between them, unspoken but undeniable. "We need to alert other observatories," Carlos finally said, breaking the silence. "Whatever this is, we need confirmation from multiple sources before we make any claims." Alina nodded, already drafting the notification that would be sent to astronomical facilities worldwide. As she typed, a shiver ran through her that had nothing to do with the temperature-controlled environment of the control room. She couldn't shake the feeling that this moment, this ordinary night shift that had suddenly become extraordinary, marked a threshold, that the timestamp on her initial report 3:11 UTC, March 12, 2025, would someday be remembered alongside other pivotal moments in human history. Some discoveries announce themselves with grandeur, bright lights in the sky, dramatic explosions, undeniable spectacle. Others arrive more subtly, like a whisper that must be leaned into to be heard. The first signal from 3IATLAS was of the latter kind, quiet, ambiguous, yet persistent. A gentle tap on humanity's shoulder from the vast darkness beyond our solar system. Within hours of the initial detection, observatories across the planet began redirecting their instruments toward the coordinates provided by the Atlas team. From the snow-covered radio telescopes of Antarctica to the sprawling array in New Mexico's desert, from Japan's Subaru telescope to South Africa's Salt Observatory, humanity's eyes and ears turned toward a single point in space, searching for confirmation of what the team in Tenerife had glimpsed. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura at the Mauna Kea Observatory in Hawaii was among the first to capture visual data of the object. The pre-dawn air on the mountain was thin and cold, the sky overhead so clear that stars seemed to hang like lanterns just beyond reach. Inside the control room, however, Hiroshi noticed none of this. His attention was fixed entirely on the monitor before him, where the first visual signature of 3I Atlas was resolving into clarity. "There's something strange about the light signature," he told his team, voice hushed, as if he might disturb the object they were observing. "It has a faint bluish hue, but it's not consistent. It seems to pulse." The pulsation didn't follow any recognizable pattern, not the precise rhythm of a pulsar, not the regular variation of a binary star system. It fluctuated irregularly, like a heartbeat responding to stimuli. "Like something alive," whispered his assistant, immediately looking embarrassed at the unscientific comparison. But Hiroshi didn't dismiss the observation. There was something organic about the rhythm, something that resonated with patterns found in living systems rather than in the mechanical precision of celestial mechanics. It was subtle but undeniably quality that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up, even as his rational mind searched for conventional explanations. At the Atacama Large Millimeter Array in Chile, Dr. Isabella Montenegro was conducting spectrographic analysis of the light reflected from 3IATLAS. Her findings added another layer to the emerging mystery. "These spectrographic readings don't make sense," she told her colleagues as they gathered around her workstation. "They show traces of elements that shouldn't exist in combination, at least not naturally." "Could it be a calibration error?" suggested one of her teammates, voicing the most rational explanation. "I've run 3 separate calibrations," Isabella replied, frustration evident in her tone. "Either all our equipment is malfunctioning in exactly the same way, or this object contains synthetic elements, materials that would require technological intervention to create." The word technological hung in the air, charged with implication. No one wanted to be the first to suggest the obvious conclusion that if 3I Atlas contained synthetic materials, it might be artificial in origin. The history of astronomy was littered with premature claims of extraordinary discoveries that had later been debunked. Careers had been damaged, reputations tarnished, scientific caution warred with the excitement of potential discovery. This tension between wonder and skepticism, between the desire to believe and the discipline to doubt, began to define the entire investigation. In secure chat rooms and private video conferences, astronomers around the world shared their findings, their questions, and occasionally their speculations, always careful to couch the most radical possibilities in layers of scientific qualification. If fanned, I emphasize, if these readings are accurate. Dr. Elena Reyes told a virtual gathering of colleagues, then we're observing behavior that cannot be explained by our current understanding of celestial mechanics. We need more data, was the constant refrain. More observations, more measurements, more time to analyze and verify before any conclusions could be drawn. Yet even as they counseled patience and methodical investigation, many of these scientists found themselves working through the night, canceling lectures and appointments, postponing other research to focus on the mysterious visitor that had appeared in their skies. Because beneath the professional caution, beneath the carefully measured scientific language, a current of excitement ran through the global astronomical community, the awareness that they might be witnessing something truly unprecedented, something that could change not just their understanding of the universe, but humanity's perception of its place within it. Dr. Ava Williams had devoted her career to the study of interstellar objects, particularly Oumuamua, cigar-shaped visitor that had passed through our solar system in 2017, triggering years of debate about its origins and nature. When news of 3I Atlas reached her office at MIT, she approached the data with the careful skepticism that had defined her professional life. The academic aftermath of Oumuamua had taught hard lessons about the dangers of speculation. When Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb had suggested the object might be an artificial light sail from another civilization, the scientific community had responded with both fascination and harsh criticism. Careers had been affected, research funding questioned, professional relationships strained. Ava had no intention of falling into similar controversy. Yet, as she compiled the incoming data on 3I Atlas, comparing it to the extensive records she maintained on Oumuamua, she found herself confronting observations that defied conventional explanation. Unlike its predecessor, which had followed a hyperbolic path through our solar system determined by the sun's gravity, 3.1 ATLAS appeared to be making subtle course adjustments, minor deviations from its expected trajectory that, when mapped over time, suggested deliberate navigation rather than passive movement. I'm not saying it's artificial, she carefully explained to her graduate students during an emergency lab meeting. I'm saying that if it is natural, then we need to rewrite our understanding of celestial mechanics. Wei Zhang, her most promising doctoral candidate, had spent the night running simulations to explain the object's movement through natural processes. Could it be out, he suggested, referencing the phenomenon where comets eject material as they warm, creating a natural form of propulsion, like a comet venting material that provides thrust in a specific direction. I considered that, Ava replied, pulling up thermal imaging data that showed no heat signature consistent without whatever's causing these course adjustments. It's not expelling material we can detect. The unverified motion reports spread quickly through secure research forums and private academic channels. Late-night video conferences connected astronomers across time zones, all sharing data, all asking the same questions. What are we seeing? What does it mean? And perhaps most urgently, what should we do about it? In those early days, no one had answers, only more questions, each one leading down paths of speculation that blurred the line between science and something more philosophical. If 3I Atlas was showing signs of intelligent control, did that mean it contained life? Or was it merely a probe, an extension of intelligence from somewhere else? Was it studying us as we studied it? And if so, what were we revealing about ourselves in our response? These discussions remained largely confined to professional circles, conducted in technical language that wouldn't trigger media attention if intercepted. But within those protected spaces, the excitement was palpably the sense that humanity might be standing at the threshold of a discovery as significant as Galileo's first observations through his telescope, or the moment when Edwin Hubble realized the universe was expanding. While scientists debated in closed forums, the European Space Agency faced a different kind of pressure. Their telemetry logs from the night of discovery showed unusual gaps, 9-second intervals, where data simply stopped recording before resuming. The engineering team initially blamed solar flare activity, pointing to elevated radiation levels that could interfere with transmission. These kinds of interruptions are common, insisted Marcus Vogel, ESA's communication director, in a memo to research staff. They don't represent lost data, merely delayed transmission due to interference. But independent researchers examining the publicly available logs noted something strange. The gaps occurred at regular intervals, precisely 9 seconds apart, and always happened when 3I Atlas showed its strongest signal pulses. It seemed less like random interference and more like editing, as if something or someone was redacting specific moments from the record. Dr. Sofia Petrovic, a data analyst with no formal connection to the project, published an unofficial analysis that quickly went viral among researchers. The statistical probability of these gaps occurring randomly at these exact intervals is approximately 1 in 2.7 million, she wrote. Either we're witnessing an astronomically unlikely coincidence, or these gaps are intentional. The ESA neither confirmed nor denied her analysis, but several employees requested transfers away from the project in the days that followed. Rumors spread that some had witnessed things during those 9-second gaps that they couldn't explain or weren't permitted to discuss. That the incomplete data became a source of fascination as compelling as the signal itself. What had been lost in those moments of silence? What had been seen and then hidden? The gaps in knowledge proved as captivating as knowledge itself, a canvas upon which imagination painted its own truth. This pattern of information revealed and concealed, of transparency and opacity, began to characterize the entire 3IATLAS investigation. As public interest grew, official statements became increasingly measured and technical, revealing little while appearing to communicate much. The gaps between what was known, what was suspected, and what was shared widened into chasms that alternative theories rushed to fill. Dr. Julian Reeves had been working at the Atlas Observatory for over a decade when the first signal was detected. In interviews months later, He described an atmosphere in the control room that night that defied rational explanation. There was this strange calm, he recalled, his voice soft as he searched for words. Even as we were witnessing something potentially revolutionary, there was this ... stillness, like the quiet at the center of a storm. Several of us had this odd sensation of being watched, not by each other, but by something else. He wasn't alone in this feeling. Other scientists present that night reported similar experiences. Dr. Alina Reyes described how monitors flickered intermittently, how external drives failed for no apparent reason, how data uploaded to secure servers from sources they couldn't identify. "I'm a scientist," she emphasized in her own account. "I don't believe in the supernatural or in coincidences that can't be explained." But that night, something was different. It felt like we weren't just observing, we were being observed in return. Like 3i Atlas was studying our reaction to its presence. Most dismissed these impressions as the natural human response to potential first contactor, projection of our own expectations onto an ambiguous situation. Yet the consistency of the reports from different team members, none of whom had discussed their experiences with each other before being interviewed, gave even skeptics pause. Something had happened in that control room beyond the mere detection of an unusual object. Something had shifted in the relationship between observer and observed. For perhaps the first time in human history, we faced the possibility that the universe wasn't just being watched by us. We were being watched back as data accumulated in those first critical weeks. ESA employed its most sophisticated neural analysis models, intelligence systems, designed to detect patterns that human observers might miss. These models had been trained on decades of astronomical data, learning to distinguish between natural phenomena and anomalies that warranted further investigation. The results defied all expectations. Two separate AI systems analyzing identical data sets from 3i Atlas reached dramatically different conclusions. The first classified the object as mineral debris, likely an unusual asteroid with rare Earth elements that accounted for its strange properties. The second, with equal confidence, identified it as having a technologically reflective surface consistent with manufactured materials. Dr. Mariam Alfayez, who had helped develop both models, was baffled by the contradiction. These systems share 97% of their training data, she explained to her team during an emergency meeting. They've never produced contradictory results before. It's as if they're perceiving two different realities. Some technicians suggested a coding error or data corruption, but thorough diagnostics revealed nothing wrong with either system. The A's were functioning perfectly, they simply couldn't agree on what they were seeing. One recognized nature, the other technology. One saw chance, the other design. For the first time, scientists faced the eerie possibility that their own tools extensions of human perception designed to overcome human limitations were arguing about the nature of reality. The implications extended beyond 3i Atlas, beyond astronomy, into philosophical territory. If our instruments for understanding the universe couldn't reach consensus, what did that mean for our ability to comprehend what we were witnessing? Dr. Thomas Harwell, a philosopher of science brought in to consult on the project, offered a perspective that many found unsettling. Perhaps 3i Atlas exists in a state that defies our binary categories. Not fully natural, not fully artificial, but something our language and thinking haven't evolved to describe. Our AI models, limited by the concepts we've taught them, can only see one aspect or the other, than ever the complete truth. His words echoed through research facilities worldwide, triggering discussions that blended astronomy with epistemology, the study of how we know what we know. What if we were encountering something that didn't just challenge our knowledge, but the very framework through which we acquired knowledge? What if 3I Atlas wasn't just a visitor from another star system, but from another paradigm of existence altogether? These philosophical questions might have remained academic, if not for the next discovery one that shifted the investigation from observation to potential communication, from studying a distant object to engaging with what might be a responsive entity. 3 weeks after the initial detection, astronomers at the Gran Telescopio Canarias made an observation that defied conventional understanding. The light reflected from 3I Atlas didn't disperse naturally, it polarized at specific intervals, creating patterns that resembled encoded information more than random reflection. Light doesn't behave this way naturally, insisted Dr. Isabella Montenegro, lead researcher at the facility. These polarization patterns show a level of organization that suggests either an unknown natural process or deliberate modulation. The patterns occurred every 108 minutes, a number that caught the attention of mathematicians when they realized it represented exactly twice the value of Euler's number E, rounded to 3 decimal places. Such mathematical precision in a natural phenomenon seemed improbable at best. Radio astronomers, intrigued by these optical patterns, began sending test signals toward the object's simple mathematical sequences that any intelligent entity might recognize. The response wasn't immediate, but it was undeniable. Each transmission was followed by subtle fluctuations in the object's light signature, fluctuations that mirrored the patterns sent from Earth. It could be coincidence, Dr. Montenegro cautioned in her reports. It could be interference. It could be a dozen different natural explanations. But privately, in conversations not recorded in official documents, she expressed a different view. It feels like something talking back, she confided to colleagues over late-night coffee. Not with words, not even with concepts we can understand yet, but responding nonetheless, acknowledging us. The potential implications of two-way communication, however ambiguous and unconfirmed, elevated the 3I Atlas investigation to a new level of significance. If the object was not merely passive but responsive, if it was not just being observed but observing in return, then the careful scientific distance that had characterized the research suddenly collapsed into something more intimate, more consequential. No one could agree whether the fluctuations represented genuine communication, cosmic coincidence, or interference patterns from unknown sources. The scientific community fractured along lines of interpretation, with some seeing meaningful exchange where others found only random noise against a backdrop of human pattern-seeking. This division reflected a deeper truth about human perception. We often see what we're prepared to see. Those who believed contact with non-Earth intelligence was possible found evidence supporting their view. Those who believed it impossible found reasons to dismiss the same evidence. 3I Atlas became a mirror. reflecting not just light, but our deepest hopes and fears about our place in the cosmos. As the European Space Agency continued releasing carefully curated data about 3I Atlas, another story developed in parallel, the story of what wasn't being said. NASA, typically quick to comment on significant astronomical discoveries, maintained an uncharacteristic silence about the object. No press releases, no public statements, not even acknowledgement that they were tracking it alongside their European counterparts. This silence became increasingly conspicuous as weeks passed. Reporters seeking comment received only generic responses about monitoring the situation and collaborating with international partners. Behind closed doors, however, a different narrative was unfolding. A mid-level analyst at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory later revealed that internal memos had been circulating since day 3 of the discovery, classifying 3I Atlas as potentially non-natural and restricting discussion to personnel with specific security clearances. Equipment was redirected, resources allocated, and teams assembled, all without public acknowledgement. The absence of denial became more significant than any confirmation could have been, noted Dr. Rachel Winters, a sociologist studying institutional responses to potential first contact scenarios. When an organization like NASA, built on the principle of public engagement with science, suddenly goes quiet, that silence speaks volumes. The information vacuum created by official reticence was quickly filled with speculation. Why the secrecy if 3I Atlas was simply another celestial object? What had they seen that warranted such caution? And most troublingly, what precedent did this set for how humanity's representatives would handle potential first contact? For many observers, the institutional silence surrounding 3I Atlas echoed Cold War behaviors, when information was currency and secrecy was strategy. It suggested that despite decades of discussion about open scientific collaboration, despite international agreements about sharing astronomical data, the old instincts remained: control information, maintain advantage, proceed with caution when facing the unknown. In that silence, public trust began to erode. If we couldn't rely on scientific institutions to be forthcoming about a distant object in space, what else might they be concealing? The silence became louder than any official statement could have been, a resonant absence that amplified fears and fed conspiracy theories that would soon divide public opinion worldwide. While government agencies maintained their cautious approach, the private sector moved with characteristic speed and discretion. SpaceX, Blue Origin, and smaller aerospace companies quietly redirected observation satellites without announcement or explanation. Internal documents later leaked to the press revealed that Elon Musk had personally ordered a reprioritization of SpaceX resources within hours of the initial detection. This is potentially the most significant discovery in human history. He reportedly told his executive team, "I want every eye we have in the sky looking at this thing yesterday." Blue Origin similarly shifted resources, though with less documentation and more plausible deniability. Their official position remained that satellite redirections were part of planned system tests, but former employees confirmed that the company had established a dedicated team working exclusively on 3I Atlas data analysis. These private entities unbound by the bureaucratic caution of government agencies, moved aggressively to gather data. Some claimed their more sensitive equipment detected a faint thermal signature consistent with controlled propulsion systems, heat patterns that suggested energy conversion rather than natural processes. Others reported unusual electromagnetic emissions that defied categorization. Yet most of these private observations remained proprietary, shared neither with the public nor with the broader scientific community. The corporate secrecy surrounding 3I Atlas began to mirror government secrecy, creating information silos where data was treated as competitive advantage rather than collective knowledge. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, an astrophysicist who consulted for several private aerospace companies, later described this period with troubled reflection. We had the opportunity to approach this discovery as a unified human endeavor, but instead we fragmented into competing governmental, academic, each holding pieces of a puzzle no one could solve alone. This fragmentation extended beyond information sharing to interpretation itself. Private analysts, driven by different incentives than academic researchers, reached conclusions that sometimes contradicted established science. Without peer review or external validation, these conclusions circulated within executive circles, influencing decisions made beyond public scrutiny. The corporate response to 31ATLAS revealed how deeply commercialization had penetrated what was once the most collaborative human endeavor, the exploration of space. In a supposedly transparent scientific era, old patterns of secrecy and competition reasserted themselves at the first hint of truly significant discovery. As information about 3I Atlas filtered into public awareness through leaks, unofficial statements, and fragmented reporting, social media transformed the scientific mystery into something else, entirely a digital battleground where evidence mattered less than narrative, where speculation outweighed observation, and where the line between reasoned hypothesis and conspiracy theory blurred beyond recognition. Two distinct camps emerged almost immediately. The first saw 3I Atlas as nothing more than a projection of humanity's eternal search for meaning, another case of pattern seeking, primates finding significance in random cosmic events. This group, self-described skeptics, pointed to the history of false alarms in astronomy. From the Martian canals to Oumuamua, we want to believe we're not alone so badly that we'll interpret any unusual data as evidence of intelligence, argued Dr. Victor Ramos in a widely shared video essay. 3I Atlas is just the latest screen onto which we're projecting our cosmic loneliness. The opposing camp embraced the possibility that humanity was witnessing first contact, however subtle and ambiguous. They catalogued the growing list of 3IATLAS, anomalized controlled deceleration, its response to signals, its mathematically precise light polarization, asked what probability threshold science required before considering non-terrestrial intelligence as a viable hypothesis. At what point does skepticism become denial? Challenged astrophysicist Dr. Yuki Tanaka. If we're not prepared to recognize intelligence beyond Earth, even when the evidence accumulates, then we've moved from scientific caution to philosophical bias. These debates raged across platforms, with hashtags like #AtlasContact and #CosmicDelusion trending globally. Ordinary people with no scientific background found themselves passionately arguing about spectroscopic analysis and orbital mechanics. Memes and counter-memes spread like wildfire, reducing complex astronomical data to shareable images with pithy captions. Scientists watching this public discourse unfold found themselves increasingly marginalized in their own area of expertise. Their carefully qualified statements were screenshot, taken out of context, and weaponized by both sides. Their calls for patience and further observation were drowned out by demands for immediate conclusions. Please remember that confirmation takes time, pleaded Dr. Alina Reyes in a rare public statement. Science isn't about rushing to judgment, it's about methodical investigation. We're still gathering data, still analyzing, still trying to understand what 3I Atlas represents. But by then, public imagination had outrun data. The object had ceased to be merely a celestial anomaly and had become a symbol of hope for some, of fear for others, and for many, a test of their fundamental worldview. In this transformation, something profound was revealed about human nature, our tendency to make meaning before making measurements, to seek narrative before seeking truth. On April 2nd, 3 weeks after the initial detection, a new dimension was added to the unfolding mystery, a faint radio transmission matching 3-1 ATLAS's coordinates appeared on amateur frequencies, a pattern that repeated every 11 minutes with a precision that caught the pretension of SETI researchers worldwide. Martin Chang, an amateur radio enthusiast in New Zealand, was the first to detect the signal using modified equipment in his home observatory. "I almost deleted the recording," he later admitted. "I thought it was interference from local sources. But when I analyzed the pattern, I realized it was coming from exactly where 3I Atlas was positioned." The pattern resembled structured Morse intervals, not sending recognizable letters, but maintaining a rhythm that felt deliberate. Short pulse, long pulse, pause. 3 short pulses, pause. Long pulse, short pulse, long pulse, pause. The sequence repeated without variation, like a beacon or a signature. Cheng uploaded his recording to an online forum for amateur astronomers, where it quickly caught the attention of professionals. Within hours, radio telescopes around the world were searching for confirmation, with mixed results. Some detected nothing. Others found signals that partially matched Cheng's recording but differed in key aspects. A few reported receiving the exact pattern he had documented. European Space Agency issued a terse statement calling the transmission unverified and cautioning against premature conclusions based on amateur observations, but their careful wording did little to contain the spreading excitement. The recording itself went viral, streamed millions of times across platforms ranging from TikTok to academic websites. People listened obsessively, many claiming to hear patterns that others couldn't detect. Some insisted they could translate the pulses into words or images. Musicians remixed the signal into compositions that topped streaming charts. A global audience, regardless of scientific literacy, found themselves mesmerized by what might be the first audible evidence of non-Earth intelligence. Dr. Jenna Alvarez, a SETI researcher at Berkeley, offered one of the more measured responses, whether this signal originates from 3I Atlas or not. What's fascinating is our collective reaction to it. Once people listened, they couldn't unhear the rhythm that sounded eerily deliberate. We're hardwired to find meaning in patterns. It's how our brains make sense of a chaotic universe. But privately, even scientists who publicly urged caution found themselves affected by the recording. There was something about hearing the potential communication rather than merely seeing data points on a screen that bypassed intellectual filters and spoke directly to more primitive parts of the brain. The part that recognizes a voice in the darkness. The part that knows when it's not alone. The careful management of 3 IATLAS information by official agencies suffered a significant blow in early April when an internal document appeared on several encrypted file-sharing platforms simultaneously. The document, allegedly written by an ESA engineer, identified only as PV, contained calculations and projections that contradicted public statements about the object's trajectory. While official reports had suggested 3I Atlas would pass through the outer solar system and continue into interstellar space. This leaked document showed detailed vector analyses, indicating the object was actually slowing, not accelerating, and appeared to be adjusting its course toward Earth's orbital path. Current deceleration rates and observed course corrections suggest intercept potential with Earth orbit between 37 to 42 months from initial detection. The document stated with clinical precision. Recommended protocols for direct contact scenarios should be implemented immediately. ESA officials quickly dismissed the document as fabricated and not reflecting any official analysis. They pointed to inconsistencies in formatting and terminology as evidence of forgery. But independent astronomers who reviewed the calculations found them not only plausible but perfectly aligned with observational data that had been made public. Whoever created this document had access to high computational models, noted Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura after reviewing the leak. The mathematics are too precise, too consistent with observed behavior to be easily dismissed. Either it's genuine, or it was created by someone with exceptional knowledge of celestial mechanics and access to restricted datasets. The leak transformed public discourse about 3IATLAS overnight. What had been scientific curiosity about a distant anomaly suddenly became concern about potential direct contact. News outlets that had relegated the story to science segments now featured it in headlines. Government officials who had never commented on the object were suddenly pressed for statements about contingency plans. For those tracking the story closely, however, the most disturbing aspect wasn't the content of the leak, but its timing. The document appeared online exactly 108 minutes after a particularly strong signal pulse from 3I Atlas, the same 108-minute interval observed in the object's light polarization patterns. This coincidence led some to speculate that the leak itself might be part of a communication strategy, not from ESA, but from whatever intelligence might be guiding the mysterious visitor in secure government facilities around the world. Intelligence agencies began investigating not just the content of the leak, but its source. Was it truly a whistleblower within ESA, a foreign intelligence operation, or something more unusual? The boundaries between astronomy, security concerns, and potential first contact protocols began to blur. creating new intersections between scientific and geopolitical considerations as official institutions struggled to maintain control of the narrative. A different kind of response emerged from the public. Amateur astronomers, private labs, and even individual citizens with access to specialized equipment began attempting direct communication with 3i Atlas, using everything from modified laser pointers to repurposed satellite dishes. They sent encoded light pulses and radio signals toward the object, hoping to provoke a measurable reaction. These unofficial contact attempts ranged from the sophisticated to the absurd. The Berkeley SETI group transmitted prime number sequentiza, universal mathematical language that any advanced intelligence might recognize. A collective of artists in Japan sent rhythmic light patterns based on the Fibonacci sequence. A private citizen in Montana repeatedly broadcast the opening notes to close. Encounters of the third kind using a homemade radio transmitter. Most received no response. Documenting their attempts with a mixture of scientific methodology and disappointed longing. A few claimed success, posting videos of alleged reactions from 3i Atlas that were quickly debunked as camera artifacts or outright fabrications. Provoking an unknown entity without protocol or consensus is profoundly irresponsible, warned Dr. Ava Williams in an open letter signed by hundreds of researchers. We have no way of knowing how our signals might be interpreted or what response they might trigger. But the warning fell largely on deaf ears. The desire to make contact, to be the first to establish communication with something beyond Earth, proved too compelling to resist. Social media celebrated these amateur efforts, turning ordinary people into folk heroes for their attempts to call the dark, as one viral hashtag described it. Dr. Thomas Harwell, the philosopher of science consulting on the project, observed the phenomenon with troubled fascination. Throughout history, humans have been both drawn to and terrified by the unknown, he noted. What we're seeing now is humanity's curiosity and our need for connection overriding our caution. It's both our gift and our gamble. As a species, this willingness to reach out before we fully understand what we're reaching toward. The uncoordinated contact attempts revealed something profound about human nature, our inability to witness potential intelligence without trying to communicate with it. Despite all warnings, despite all unknowns, we could not help but call out to the darkness, hoping something would answer back. This impulse to seek connection, to establish dialogue, to bridge the void between self and other seemed embedded in our very DNA, a defining characteristic of what it means to be human. On April 27, precisely 46 days after the initial detection, telescopes at the European Southern Observatory in Chile recorded something that would transform speculation into conviction for many observers. A single, visible flash emanated from 3IA TLA's brief, precise, and perfectly timed, exactly 3 hours after a European list signal had been sent from a research facility in France. The flash lasted only 1.3 seconds, but its intensity and spectral characteristics made it impossible to dismiss as equipment malfunction or natural phenomenon. It was directional, aimed precisely at Earth, and contained the same mathematical ratio that had been sent in the European transmission, the first 20 digits of pi, encoded in binary light pulses. Coincidence, said official statements from both ESA and the Chilean observatory. A natural light reflection that happened to occur at that particular moment. Confirmation, said believers around the world, as the clip became the most replayed astronomical observation in history. Within hours of its release, the flash had been viewed more than 2 billion times across platforms. Slowed down, enhanced, analyzed, frame by frame, it became the Zapruder film of potential first contact, dissected, debated, interpreted, and reinterpreted by experts and amateurs alike. What made the flash particularly compelling wasn't just its timing or its directional nature, but its perfect mimicry of the signal sent from Earth. The binary encoding was identical, not a response so much as a reflection, an echo that demonstrated not just reception but comprehension. Dr. Sophie Chen, who had helped design the original transmission from the French facility, could barely contain her emotion when interviewed about the response. "We sent pi because mathematics is universal," she explained, her voice wavering slightly. "Any intelligence capable of interstellar travel would recognize this fundamental constant. We didn't expect an answer. We certainly didn't expect such a perfect echo of our own message." The flash became a turning point in public perception. For those predisposed to believe in non-Earth intelligence, it was the confirmation they had been waiting for. For skeptics, it represented a challenge to their framework, difficult to explain through natural processes, yet equally difficult to accept as definitive proof of contact. Government agencies maintained their cautious stance, neither confirming nor denying the significance of the event. But their silence now seemed less like prudence and more like avoidance of an increasingly obvious reality. Something out there was watching, listening, and now responding. The image of 3I ATLAS blinking back captured the public imagination in a way that technical data never could. It transformed an abstract astronomical phenomenon into something relatable, something almost personal, a gesture that any human could understand as communication. A simple acknowledgement, "I see you seeing me," days after the flash that captivated global attention. 3.1 Atlas did something that defied not just expectations, but fundamental laws of physics as understood by terrestrial science. It altered its velocity and trajectory in a way that could not be explained by any known natural force, not gravity, not radiation pressure, not interaction with solar wind or magnetic fields. The change was subtle but unmistakable. The object decelerated by approximately 0.27% and adjusted its course by 1.4 degrees, a minor correction for most spacecraft, but revolutionary for an object traveling through interstellar space without visible means of propulsion. There is no natural explanation for this kind of controlled maneuver, stated Dr. Carlos Mendez, who had been monitoring the object since its discovery. No outgassing was detected. No fragmentation occurred. It simply changed direction, as if it decided to. What made this maneuver particularly unsettling was the manner in which it occurred. Unlike conventional propulsion systems that produce heat, light, or particle ejection, 3.1 ATLAS altered its course silently, without any detectable energy signature. It was as if it could manipulate spacetime itself, rather than pushing against it, a technology so advanced it appeared. In Arthur C. Clarke's famous phrase, "indistinguishable from magic," If this were a human spacecraft, noted Dr. Elena Reyes, we would say the pilot had made a course correction. But since we're still reluctant to assign agency to 3IATLAS, we find ourselves without language to describe what we're observing. The maneuver intensified debates about the nature of the object. Those who had maintained it was a natural phenomenon found their position increasingly difficult to defend. Those who believed it represented technology from beyond Earth felt vindicated, though questions remained about its origin, purpose, and capabilities. Perhaps most significantly, the course adjustment suggested intentionality, not just reaction, like the flash that had mirrored Earth's signal, but independent action toward some unknown goal. This raised uncomfortable questions. Was 3I Atlas merely passing through our solar system, or was Earth itself its destination? Was it observing humanity specifically, or was our planet simply one point of interest among many? Dr. Mariam Alfiez, who had observed the conflicting AI interpretations of the object, offered a perspective that resonated with many. The mystery deepened not because of what it did, but because it did so silently. In that silence, we confront the possibility that we're witnessing technology so far beyond our own that we cannot even detect its mechanisms, let alone understand them. Space, for once, felt too quiet, but the pregnant stillness that comes when you suddenly realize you're being watched. The void between stars had always represented humanity's ultimate solitude. Now it felt like a room where someone else had just cleared their throat, as evidence mounted that 3I Atlas represented something beyond conventional understanding. The implications expanded beyond astronomy and physics into philosophy, theology, and the fundamental question of humanity's place in the cosmos. Leaders from various disciplines began wrestling with what such an encounter might mean for our collective self-perception. Dr. Rebecca Ndlovu, a prominent philosopher at Oxford, framed the question that was increasingly on many minds. If 3IATLAS is artificial, if it was created and sent by intelligence beyond Earth, then who or what sent it? And what does their existence mean for every human belief system that has placed us at the center of creation? Religious leaders offered varied perspectives. Some saw potential confirmation of ancient texts that spoke of celestial visitation. Others cautioned against hasty reinterpretation of Scripture based on still ambiguous evidence. Pope Francis issued a statement affirming that God's creation may be vaster and more wondrous than we have imagined, filled with beings who, like us, seek to understand their purpose. Indigenous knowledge keepers from various traditions noted that their cosmologies had always included awareness of other intelligent beings sharing the universe, some physical, others spiritual, all part of an interconnected reality that Western science was only beginning to contemplate. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who had observed the private sector response to the discovery, reflected on the technological implications. If 3IATLAS represents technology capable of interstellar travel and the manipulation of physics as we understand it, then we must confront the possibility that our own technological development is in its infancy. We may be like early humans, discovering fire while observing electricity. The lines between machine and intention began to blur as experts considered what form non-Earth intelligence might take. Would it be biological, like us, mechanical, some hybrid of organic and technological components, or something entirely beyond our conceptual framework. We may need to expand our definition of life itself, suggested astrobiologist Dr. Maya Patel. Our current understanding is heavily biased toward carbon-based, water-dependent organisms that evolved on this particular planet, but intelligence could arise from entirely different substrates, following evolutionary paths we can barely imagine. As these discussions spread beyond academic circles into public discourse, humanity found itself at a threshold not just of potential contact, but of potential transformation in how we understood ourselves and our place in the universe. The presence of 3I-ATLAS, whether ultimately confirmed as artificial or explained through some as yet undiscovered natural process, had already changed us by forcing us to consider possibilities beyond our established frameworks. We stood at the edge of a new chapter in human understanding, peering into a darkness that might contain other minds, other civilizations, other ways of being that could reshape everything we thought we knew about existence itself as public fascination. With 3I, Atlas intensified. A subtle shift occurred in the emotional tenor of global response. The initial wonder and curiosity began giving way to something more complex, a mixture of hope and apprehension that psychologists recognized as a natural reaction to potentially transformative encounters. What we're witnessing is a collective processing of the unknown, explained Dr. Nadia Kimothy, a social psychologist specializing in large-scale human responses to crisis and change. After the initial excitement comes the question, what does this mean for us, for our safety, for our future? Governments worldwide quietly increased orbital monitoring, redirecting defense satellites and space surveillance systems toward 3I Atlas without public announcement. Military advisors briefed leaders on contingency plans, not because they expected hostility, but because uncertainty itself represented a potential security concern. Yet this institutional caution contrasted sharply with public sentiment, which remained predominantly curious rather than fearful. Polls conducted across multiple countries showed that over 70% of respondents viewed potential contact with intelligence as more opportunity than threat, while only 14% expressed significant concern about negative outcomes. Dr. Thomas Harwell, who had been observing the philosophical dimensions of the discovery, noted a pattern in how people integrated this new possibility into their worldview. Many experts have begun suggesting that 3I-ATLAS acts as a cosmic mirror showing humanity how it responds to the unknown. Are we driven by fear or curiosity? Do we reach for weapons or for communication tools? Do we retreat into tribalism or expand toward universal connection? This metaphor of the mirror resonated widely, appearing in everything from academic papers to popular songs about the mysterious visitor. It suggested that the encounter, regardless of its origin, was revealing more about humanity than about whatever intelligence might lie behind. 3I-ATLAS itself, perhaps. The most important question isn't whether we're ready for discovery, suggested Dr. Elena Reyes during a rare public appearance, but whether we're ready for self-discovery. Are we truly prepared to see ourselves as we are, a young species, still struggling with our own impulses toward both creation and destruction, now potentially witnessed by eyes that have seen more of the universe than we can imagine? In living rooms and classrooms, in laboratories and places of worship, in online forums and quiet conversations under starlit skies, people contemplated these questions with a depth of reflection rarely seen in daily life. Whatever 3i Atlas represented, whether visitor, probe, or natural phenomenon, had already achieved something profound. It had made humanity look both outward and inward with new intensity. The mirror it held up reflected not just our scientific capabilities, but our deepest values, our hidden fears, our capacity for wonder, and our ability to confront the unknown with either open hands or clenched fists. Were we truly ready for discovery, or did we only crave control? The answer emerged not in official statements or technical analyses, but in the millions of individual responses to this cosmic mystery, each reflecting a personal reckoning with what it means to be human in a universe that might contain other minds. As astronomers continued analyzing the data flowing from 3i ESA's deep analysis team made a discovery that added yet another layer to the unfolding mystery. Hidden within the signal echoes was a strange harmonic resonance, a mathematical pattern repeating the ratio 1 to 1.618, the golden mean found throughout nature, from the spiral of galaxies to the structure of DNA. This ratio appeared in the timing between signal pulses, in the wavelength relationships of emitted light, and in the geometric positioning of the object's course adjustments. It was too precisely maintained, too consistently applied across different aspects of 3i-ATLAS's behavior to be random occurrence. The golden ratio is fundamental to the structure of our universe, explained Dr. James Chen, who had been studying the pattern since its discovery. It appears in everything from the arrangement of leaves on a stem to the shape of our Milky Way galaxy. Finding it embedded in every aspect of 3i-ATLAS's behavior suggests either an incredible coincidence or deliberate design based on universal mathematical principles. Some researchers saw the pattern as further evidence of artificial origin, a signature of intelligent creation that transcended cultural or species-specific symbols by relying on mathematics embedded in the fabric of reality itself. Others suggested it might represent a natural process not yet understood by terrestrial science, pointing out that many self-organizing systems in nature naturally express the golden ratio. Dr. Sofia Petrovic, who had analyzed the gaps in ESA's telemetry data, offered a third perspective that captured the imagination of many. What if the mathematics we're detecting isn't a property of 3i Atlas itself, but of its communication method? What if this ratio isn't just embedded in the object, but is the fundamental language it's using to reach us, the most universal dialect in existence? This possibility that the golden mean might represent not just a signature, but an active attempt at communication through pure mathematics transformed how researchers approached the data. Rather than simply measuring and documenting the ratio's appearance, they began exploring what information might be encoded within these harmonic relationships, searching for messages hidden in the elegant mathematics for the public. This discovery resonated on an almost spiritual level. The idea that visitors from beyond our solar system might communicate through the same mathematical beauty found in nautilus shells and flower petals suggested a profound connection that, despite vast distances and potentially radical differences in biology or technology, we might share with other intelligences an appreciation for the same underlying order that shapes our universe. Some saw it as coincidence, others as design, reflected Dr. Elena Reyes. Either way, it whispered that order existed in the void, that perhaps we weren't as alone as we had feared not, but because we had found a common language written into the structure of reality itself. This discovery came closest to bridging the divide between skeptics and believers, between scientists and mystics. Whatever 3IATLAS represented, its resonance with universal mathematical principles suggested that the same order that shaped Earth's evolution might extend throughout the cosmos, a shared foundation upon which divergent forms of intelligence might build. Understanding, then, without warning or apparent cause, 3I Atlas disappeared from all tracking systems. No debris was detected, no fade-out occurred, no trace remained of the object that had captivated global attention for nearly 2 months. It was simply gone, vanished between one observation and the next, leaving astronomers staring at empty space, where moments before had been the most studied object in recent history. The disappearance occurred at precisely 3:11 UTC on May 11, exactly 2 months after the initial detection, a timing so precise it seemed deliberately choreographed. One moment, observatories worldwide were recording its steady approach. The next, nothing remained but background radiation and stars. Initial theories focused on technical explanations. Perhaps multiple equipment failures had occurred simultaneously, or a coordinated cyber attack had corrupted observational data. But as hours passed and every system, from amateur telescopes to military-grade satellite arrays, confirmed the same reality, these explanations gave way to more unsettling possibilities. It didn't just move beyond our detection range, insisted Dr. Carlos Mendez, who had been monitoring 3I Atlas since its discovery. An object traveling at subliminal speeds can't simply vanish from one frame to the next. It's as if it stepped sideways out of our reality. Some theoretical physicists suggested the object might have employed technology capable of manipulating spacetime itself, perhaps entering a wormhole, shifting into another dimension, or employing some method of faster-than-light travel, currently beyond human comprehension. Others proposed more prosaic explanations, such as a sophisticated cloaking system that rendered it invisible to Earth's detection methods. But for many, the disappearance reignited the most fundamental question of all. Had 3I Atlas ever truly been there? Or had humanity collectively witnessed something else entirely? Had we observed an actual object in space, or had we experienced some form of contact that merely used our astronomical observation systems as its medium? The event reignited the oldest question of all, noted Dr. Thomas Harwell. Was it ever truly there, or had we simply witnessed a reflection of our own search for meaning? Was 3I Atlas a visitor from beyond our solar system, or a visitor from beyond our understanding, something that entered our consciousness rather than our physical space? These questions found no easy answers in the vacuum left by 3I Atlas's disappearance. The object that had united the world in wonder now united it in confusion, shared mystery that crossed boundaries of nationality, belief system, and scientific discipline. In the absence of the object itself, all that remained was the record of its brief interaction with humanity, the data, the observations, the responses it had provoked. And in that record, something profound revealed itself, not just what 3I Atlas might have been, but what it had awakened within us during its short appearance in our skies. Months passed, and gradually the sky returned to its familiar rhythms. Scientists moved on to other research. Papers about 3I Atlas were archived in academic journals, and public attention drifted to newer mysteries. The object that had briefly united humanity in collective wonder became another entry in the catalogue of unexplained phenomena discussed occasionally in specialized forums, but fading from broader consciousness. Yet something had changed, subtly but permanently. Observatory logs revealed that telescopes worldwide still occasionally drifted toward the coordinates where 3I Atlas had last been seen, as if drawn by muscle memory or unconscious hope. Amateur astronomers maintained listening posts tuned to frequencies where the object's signals had once appeared. Children born after the event grew up learning about the visitor, alongside stories of black holes and supernovas, done in the quiet hours between midnight and dawn. When the world grows still and the stars seem closer, those who had witnessed the mystery firsthand sometimes found themselves looking skyward with a new awareness, not expectation precisely, but openness, a willingness to consider possibilities beyond the framework of established understanding, even without proof. Mystery has a way of calling us back to look again, reflected Dr. Elena Reyes, 5 years after the disappearance. Maybe that was the true purpose of 3I Atlas, not to reveal itself completely, but to remind us how to wonder, to teach us that the universe remains largely unknown, full of questions we haven't yet learned to ask. Perhaps that was the most profound legacy of the mysterious visitor, not answers, but better questions. Not certainty, but comfort with ambiguity. Not proof of other intelligence, but a deeper appreciation of our own capacity for imagination and discovery. As years passed, new anomalies would appear in the night sky. New patterns would emerge from the cosmic background. New mysteries would capture both scientific and public imagination. Each would be approached with lessons learned from 3I Atlas, with caution balanced by openness, with skepticism tempered by wonder, with the humility to acknowledge how little we truly know about the universe we inhabit. And sometimes, in dreams or in those moments between wakefulness and sleep when the mind wanders most freely, those who had followed the story most closely would find themselves returning to that spring of 2025, when, for a brief moment, humanity collectively held its breath and listened to the stars with new attention. Whatever 3I Atlas had been, visitor, messenger, natural phenomenon, or reflection of our own deepest hopes, it had changed us, not through dramatic revelation or apocalyptic transformation, but through the subtle shift that comes when a mind once closed to possibility opens, even slightly, to wonder. The mystery remained unsolved, the questions unanswered. But perhaps that was as it should be. Perhaps, in a universe as vast and strange as ours, the greatest wisdom lies not in certainty, but in the courage to keep looking up, to keep listening, to keep asking what might be waiting in the darkness between stars. Because even without proof, even without confirmation, something calls us back to look again. Something whispers that we are not alone in the vastness, not necessarily because other intelligences exist, though they might, but because the cosmos itself seems structured to be known, to be questioned, to be explored by minds capable of appreciating its elegance. And in that relationship between the observing mind and the observed universe, perhaps we find the truest connection of all the awareness that we are not separate from the cosmos, but part of it, made of the same elements, governed by the same physics, expressing the same mathematical beauty as the stars themselves. As night falls and you look upward, perhaps you'll see the sky with new eyes, not expecting visitors, but open to possibilities. Not demanding answers, but embracing questions. Not certain of what's out there, but certain that the looking itself matters. That's the gift 3i Atlas left us. Not proof of other intelligence, but a deeper appreciation of our own capacity for wonder. And somewhere, in the vast darkness between stars, something may still be watching, listening, learning about this curious species that sends signals into the void, hoping for a response, whether it returns or remains forever a mystery. The search itself has changed us, has made us more than we were before we first looked up and wondered if we were truly alone. Perhaps that was the purpose all along.